You're listening to Aimee Keeps It Creepy, the podcast where I share my obsession with true crime and the paranormal with you. I'm your host, Aimee Brooks. A favorite party pad for Lord Byron's debauchery. Secret rooms built for dark Masonic rituals. A nursery filled with child spirits that still want to play. This is Charleville Castle, a 17th century castle in Ireland, said to be one of the most haunted places in all of Europe. Hi, creepsters. Happy holidays. Hopefully you listened to my heinous holiday homicide episode, where I count down 12 Christmas murders. The craziest one, I thought, was JonBenet Ramsey, the child beauty queen who was murdered in her basement after a botched kidnapping attempt. One of the suspects was a certain creepy Santa who was obsessed with her. He wanted to be cremated when he died and mixed with gold glitter that JonBenet had given him at a party. Tell me that isn't creepy or suspicious. I posted a picture of JonBenet sitting on this creepy Santa's lap on creepypodcast.com. Very disturbing. Next week, there is a special episode that I've been working on for months now. It's a year in review of creepy news stories, like the illegal winery found in a sewage treatment plant, or an amoeba discovered that melts gardeners' brains, or the man who married his girlfriend, who happened to be a doll. My favorites, though, are the mummified Twinkie story and the paradox-free time travel story. Ew. Please subscribe to Aimee Keeps It Creepy so you never miss an episode. I'm on Instagram at Creepy Podcast. And don't miss my paranormal adventures on YouTube. My channel is called Toxic Content. And you can find all my links in the show notes or at creepypodcast.com. I am so honored to have a special guest on the podcast, Bridget Vance, the owner of Charleville Castle, thought to be one of the most haunted castles in all of Ireland, and some say the most haunted in all of Europe. Thank you for being here with us today, Bridget.
Hi, Aimee. How are you?
I'm so good. Charleville is no joke. It's imposing, grand, and simply spectacular. I'll post photos on the website creepypodcast.com. But Charleville is what you imagine an Irish castle to look like. In fact, it's been the filming location for countless films and television shows. Haunted or not, I think it's a dream to own a castle. Bridget, seriously, you are now the coolest person I know. How does an American come to own an Irish castle, especially a castle that Lord Byron partied at?
Yeah, he was quite a partier, rumor has it.
Indeed.
Well, I don't really own it. I would more call me the minder, one of the minders of the castle, because she's a very big beast. There's 65 rooms in total.
So you become the caretaker of the castle. You're feeling the castle life.
Yes.
What was your first paranormal encounter where you realized Charleville might be haunted?
Oddly enough, it was surprising. The first incident that happened was I was in my bedroom. My children were little, and I had put them to sleep and fell asleep. And I heard footsteps of children running and laughing and giggling on the floor above. Now, there's nothing on the floor above except their room.
Oh, my goodness.
So I went up with a torch.
Oh,
and
you're so brave, by the way.
And there was nothing at the end.
Oh, my.
So it would happen a few times a month. And again, I'd go up and expecting live children. And then we did some research and found out it was a children's nursery.
Wow.
So at least they weren't going to get hurt.
Right.
Which was the main concern. I mean, they weren't nasty or anything. There was nothing scary. There was no axe or, little demons. They were just being children, but not that you could see.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that movie. And then when did you realize that your castle was in fact one of the most haunted places in Ireland. I mean, that's quite a statement.
It is. We had a ghost show here. I think it was Ghost Hunters. It was an Irish show. And one of the men was writing a book. I can't recall his name. And he asked if I minded if he wrote down some of the stories. And it was after, I think, I hit 10 of them. He looked at me and he said, "Oh, my goodness, you have to be the most haunted one."
And that was just normal for you. You had no idea. Oh, my goodness.
No, I had no idea because of the amount of things that happened over the years. And also to volunteers and interns and other people, not just myself. So he's the one that just was amazed. He said a lot of places actually steal stories from each other.
Interesting.
Which I thought a bit absurd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's all scrambling to be haunted, and you really have a haunted castle.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
Okay. There's this movie called Ghostbusters. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes.
Sigourney Weaver lived in this massive Art Deco building. Bill Murray called it Spook Central. And the architect was an evil genius and cult leader of Gozer worshippers who designed it to channel ghosts for the purpose of ending the world. You may remember the scene where the heroes battle the beloved Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yes.
One of my favorite films.
we had Marshmallow Man here for the second promotion of Ghostbusters.
Oh, perfect.
We had a massive Marshmallow Man outside the castle.
That's hysterical. But there is a lot of speculation out there about Charleville being built as some kind of conduit to harness powers. The designer was an interesting fellow, Francis Johnston, a renowned Irish architect. And did I mention Freemason?
Yes. As a matter of fact, a lot of them here were Freemasons. There were 3 grandmasters from the castle.
Really?
And so they were very attuned to all of that. And the ley lines run through the East Tower and the West Tower.
Wow. So what is a ley line?
We could harness that. It's electromagnetic line that runs in the earth. It usually has to do with water.
Wow. So harnessing that power, that would be amazing.
Oh, that would be amazing. The building would be fully restored then and able to keep itself. I unfortunately don't know how to unharness it.
Oh, boy.
evil or not. I don't think there's anything evil here, though.
Right. Do you believe that there are places in the castle that were used for Masonic rituals?
Yes, there certainly were. Especially the library leads to a secret passage that leads to a priory, which looks like a chapel from the outside, but in fact was used for Mason meetings, and where the Grand Master would line his people on the sides in their uniforms and give strange instructions.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, this would have been used quite frequently for the higher up Masons. And the uncle of the man that built the castle in Molesworth Street in the Grand Lodge has a life-size portrait of him.
Really?
In his robes as the Earl of Charleville. So there's very much a key to them. Now, we also have a paper of the induction of the third Earl of Charleville with skull and crossbones stamped on it.
There's some fiendish rumors about him, the Earl of Charleville, practicing devil worship. Do you believe any of that?
No, I wouldn't put it past anybody to believe in anything, because where there's evil, there's good, or where there's good, there's evil. So it could be harnessed, I suppose, either way. I mean, in good or evil. I personally have found the good. In the dungeon area once, I did have a friend that is a psychic, and she went down there one night. Well, that's off limits now. This is when there was a lot more freedom here. And she came across a man called O'Reilly, who was an evil dungeon keeper. And he supposedly, during 1803, during the Robert Emmet Rebellion, the coal cellars were initially used before the house was built as a dungeon for a short time. And then as the place became built and inhabited, it wasn't used anymore for that.
I have a closet in my house that I call the dungeon, but I use it for storage. So your dungeon was really utilized as a dungeon, like a torture real dungeon?
We found that out after being here for a few years, that it was used for a short time during one of the rebellions.
Fascinating.
Because the man that had the castle built was the muster master for Britain. So they wouldn't want any rebellions going on. And indeed, there wasn't one down here. Now, it wasn't used then after that, I believe, because then there would have been staff and they would have used the cellars for wine storage and beer and all that.
What an awesome wine storage, having a dungeon. I love it.
There is an inner dungeon that something did strange happen in. When Dudley first came here 30 years ago, we had our kitchen above there in the old butler's pantry, a floor above. And he was invited to come over for dinner. He was helping figure what to do with the building and how to help and how to regenerate it and keep it going. And my mother and I were in the kitchen cooking. And he said, what's that noise? He heard a noise downstairs, kind of like a cackling. And my mother and I, who had gotten used to it at this point, said, well, that's nothing. That's them. And he looked at us strangely. And then it happened again. And he said, no. He said, there's got to be somebody down there. There's somebody has to have gone in. We said, Dudley, it's them. So the third time he heard this cackle, he ran down the stone steps, down and down again. And he said, come on out. Come on out. It's okay. You'll be all right. I won't do anything. I'll just show you how to get out so you don't get hurt, because it's kind of a maze down there. And he heard voices kind of taunting him. So he went and he followed. He kept lighting matches. He was a smoker back then, and it was pitch down there. He kept following the voices, telling them, oh, look, you'll be okay. Come on, lads. Let's get out of here. I'll show you the way. Again, the strange cackling. Again, he's following it, going down the maze, till he lights the match again. The voices stop, and he's at the inner chamber of the dungeon. It's the part where there's no exit. And he's frantically lighting matches to see where the voices came from. So he boots it up the stairs.
Before he runs out of matches, right?
Before he runs out of matches. Yeah, we heard him coming up the stairs, because it's all, that part is all stone, the old carved stone. And he looked at the two of us, and he said, he told us what happened with the cackling and the voices and following them. And he says, I was sure there was somebody there. Where did they go? Where did they go? I said, there's no way out of where you were. It's a dead end, Dudley. He said, but my mother and I looked at each other and said, we told you it was them.
Oh, it's almost like they were leading him to the end where he couldn't turn back.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what they did. And they really taunted him.
Sounds like it.
I've never had that experience.
Wow, I wonder if that was the O'Reilly character down there.
That might have been the one nasty that we have. He was so shocked.
I bet. Them. Oh, my goodness. I can just imagine you and your mother sitting there. Yeah, I told you. So I told you, Dudley.
Yeah, we had gotten so accustomed.
Right. You become accustomed to it. So tell me more about your other resident ghosts.
Well, we have Harriet. Harriet was almost 8. And our first encounter with Harriet was my son, Michael, was 4. I had 3 small children I brought here. Katie was 8. Michael was 2 when he came here. And Constance was 4 months old. And Michael, being a toddler, was roaming around, and we lost sight of him for a minute. This was in the winter, and we couldn't find him. We looked in all the big rooms. We looked in the bedrooms. We looked all over. Now, we were starting to panic at this point.
That's terrifying.
Yes, terrifying.
It's a massive, massive place.
It's massive, and there are areas that could be dangerous. It's tall. So, and there's a big staircase. Now, finally, after an hour of searching frantically, we found him at the bottom of a staircase. Now, this is a staircase that goes up, winding 4 flights, and it's very dark. It's in the original state, so it looks scary even. We said, "Oh, God, there you are." He said, "Don't worry, Mommy." Little boy and girl held my hand.
Oh, my goodness.
So my mother and I looked at each other, and we were happy enough. We couldn't fathom who helped him, but he was safely down the stairs because he was coming from quite a height. And then we found out that Harriet, who was a little girl, she was the daughter of the 3rd Earl and Countess. She had been expecting her friends at a party for around midsummer, and she was sent up to have her hands washed. She was looking down the staircase. It would have been very highly polished back then. And she fell over the wrong way to her death.
Oh, my goodness.
She's here. She's in and out. She's not trapped. She likes it when little children are here. Perhaps that's why she was here so much when they were young. She's friendly. We've had experiences with her. I've seen her. We have a number of people that have seen her and even caught infrared light cameras where it shows her outline.
But you saw her, Bridget? You saw her too?
Yes, I did.
What did she look like?
She's got long hair, and she wears blue ribbons in her hair. She has a white pinafore over a dark blue dress, and she's a pretty little girl.
Wow, so she was very realistic when you saw her.
She was very realistic.
Wow.
She sings.
When you saw her, did she look at you, or do you feel like it's just an impression of her?
No, not so much look at me.
So she just continued playing and singing?
She was there. She didn't look at me. Now, my mother had an experience with a whole batch of them where they looked directly at her.
Oh, God, tell me about that.
Well, this was actually on Midwinter's Eve. Now, we had no idea that there was a great significance to that at the time. And it was between the 21st, 22nd, or 3rd of December. And that's the longest night of the year. And my mother was up in her bedroom. We didn't have a party, so she wasn't drunk or anything. She had gone up to bed, and when she came down in the morning, she said, "You're not going to believe this." And we said, "What?" She said, "I saw them." I said, "What did you see?" She said, "I was asleep. I woke up at 3 a.m. I saw a man in red go across my room from the fireplace to the window and look at me. And it was like a red greatcoat with old-fashioned clothes with a cravat, like gentry."
Really? Oh.
We've since found out that we think it's Francis Johnston.
Oh, the architect. Wow.
Yes, the architect. So she didn't know at the time who the group of people were. But we researched them later on to find out who the heck they were. Then who appeared was a man in a gray-green knickers with the stockings and the cravat, like a silk type of an outfit, and a ponytail pulled back. And we found out that was Charles William Bury, the man that had the castle built. Then the next one was a woman in a big black cloak flowing to the ground. And she was maybe, I don't know, in her 40s, dark hair, and she wasn't terribly happy. And then there was Harriet, the little girl. And they all looked at my mother, who was afraid, but too interested to cover her head. And they all looked directly at her in the middle of the room. She was half asleep, half awake. And then, all of a sudden, there were a group of men surrounding her bed in long white hooded robes, putting their hands down, which we found out was a blessing. And we've since figured out they weren't monks, they weren't druids, But the color of their robes is what Masons would wear during some of their ceremonies.
Oh, I knew it. It was the Masons. I knew there was something going on.
Yes. And what they were doing was laying their hands out like a blessing. And then we found out that the woman in the black hooded cloak was Lady Emily, because we got a picture of her given to us. And then the other ones, we came across things in different books. My mother pointed and said, that's him, that's him, that's him. I said, him who, Mom? He's dead. And she'd explain.
That must be the most surreal experience, to look through old pictures of dead people and know that you've seen them and that they're living with you. Wow.
It was, because they that was the strongest they came in. I guess they come in as they're able. Maybe some times of year it's an easier portal to come through than others. And other times they're transparent or they're not in color. These were in color, except the Druids were in black and white, and they were transparent. But the other ones were solid.
It's an unbelievable story.
So she had a lot of experiences like that.
Wow.
She came to a point where she had to say, hey, would you stop waking me up at 3 a.m?
Right.
And if you ask them who they are, they won't necessarily tell you, speak it, but you'll get the hints when you're looking through pictures or something.
So have you talked to the spirits?
I don't so much as talk to them frequently. I mean, I was here on my own in, was it 92? My mother went back to the States for a year with the children, and we were just here. And I did get a bit annoyed. I did talk to them once and say, would you ever go away if you don't help clean or restore or do something? Just bugger off. And they actually left for a year.
Bunch of freeloaders, those ghosts. And they did leave you alone for a year.
They left for a year.
Wow.
Yeah. I had to apologize. And I said, well, look, maybe you can't do those things, but if you can help anyway, that would be nice. And I'm sorry. And they did come back, and I did start hearing them again. And they did make themselves known to different people. So, I mean, before that, people would look at me like, okay, uh-huh. But then as volunteers and interns and different people here started seeing and having their own experience, then they realized it was just a fact.
Tell me about some of the experiences that others have had.
Whoa. We normally had a festival called Castlepalooza every summer for 13, 14 years. And the man that runs it is Killian. And in the beginning of the festival, to save money, he would have his crew come early and stay in some of the rooms in the castle. This is before all the extra rules. Now there's rules and regulations on everything. But this is before that time. And his crew would stay in what was called the volunteer room. It's above the library and close to the area of Harriet's appearances. Now, one time, Killian came barreling down the stairs for breakfast while he had his crew here. And he said, Bonnie, he said, are there children here? I said, no, Killian, my children are grown. There's no children. He said, are you sure? He said, did somebody get in? I said, no, nobody got in. He said, well, I saw a little girl in a long dress with a white pinafore, and she was humming, la, 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 la. He said, and then I turned around, and she wasn't there. And I looked out of the room, and she wasn't there. And he looked absolutely terrified. So I just started laughing at him. I said, Killian, that's Harriet. He said, what do you mean that's Harriet? I said, that's Harriet's ghost. He said, oh, Jesus. He said, I'm not staying here anymore. He has not stayed here. He pays for self-accommodating for him and his crew since that day. He couldn't take it because he doesn't believe in ghosts. And then if you believe in them, some people think they're going to be evil. Automatically, they think that.
Well, let's talk about that.
Are there any areas of the castle that frighten you? It's just too scary. It's off limits. I'm not going over there.
No. There are, with different tours. We've had people that don't like certain rooms. Now, we have a wonderful red star chamber that would have been the lady's boudoir of her, or sitting room, that looks like an area they may have been Mason activities in, because it has an 8-pointed star and the floor is 8 points. So 8 means eternity. The pendulum actually swings right in the center, and then if you put it on the line, it pulls towards the center. Now, I have had people come in there and they back out of the room. They won't go in. And they just get cold and just say, no thanks. That's fine. Don't need to see it anymore. And it's a beautiful room. And then we have, Harriet's can have that. Harriet's staircase, the dark winding staircase, can have that effect on people. And sometimes the library.
Ooh, tell me about the library.
The library is wood-grained, and it's also 8 points with an 8-pointed star and 8 points on the floor. And that's where the secret passage is to the priory. And if you close the doors of the library, you could almost not know which way was out, because it's all identical. And it has secret cabinets that you open that lock off that could have held secret books. And then there's a panel that's inside the door that looks as if it's just a shelf of books, but it slides and goes through a hallway through the priory.
So many secrets.
Yes. It's angled at such a point that you can't see. Even if you were to get past, they would have had guards down there when they had their ceremonies. If you get past one guard and run all the way, you couldn't see around the next corner either, where they would have had another guard. So whatever they were doing in there was very private.
Oh, I want to know what they were doing.
And people, they're not allowed down the dungeon area or the coal cellars now, but people do get strange down there because creepy and has great big live spiders and stalagmite and things hanging, and it smells mank. It smells like an old prison.
Yeah, it smells like a dungeon.
They would get scared there. Yeah, because you have to go in a room to get in the inner room, and then from that, there's no way out. So it's vaulted. That's fairly creepy, but I think I've made peace with any of them here. I mean, now, having said that, I mean, if the devil said, hey, look, the world is yours, and you can restore this and save it and all this, well, I guess I'd have to have a think. But I don't think he's going to appear. I'd be a lot happier if it was a winged angel. But there's none of them in sight right now, so we live with them. And they like coming out after parties. You'll hear them talking outside your door. You'll hear them laughing. They particularly love classical music. We've had a lot of classical music concerts in the gallery, and they get excited about that, because then you'll hear a lot of footsteps and a lot of voices outside your rooms. And well, why wouldn't they like it? Oh, another thing that happened was we had a film up in our area, which is private. The producers fell in love with up here, and they were shooting on this floor, which generally is a no-no, but what the heck. So after they shot the scene, one of the men that had come up to put things back ran down the stairs to where the film was going on at that point, and he said, are we having something new now? Are we having a Gothic ball? And the cast looked at him and said, no. Why? He said, because I hear Gothic music playing upstairs. So, I mean, this is a complete stranger that comes on it. Or when we had the roof fixed about 15, 20 years ago, there were workmen up there, and the last two workmen heard whistling and saw a man in an old-type workman's uniform with a smock. And then they turned around again, and he was gone.
There's a whole cast of characters living there with you.
Yes. Yes, there's a whole cast. I don't know what makes them come and go. I don't know what makes them active, but they come and go. Sometimes you see them, sometimes you hear them, sometimes you don't. Sometimes a guest will just start staring, and you kind of say to them, "What's going on?" "I just saw one." I said, "Were you afraid?" "No, but it was just really strange. They were cold and dark." And it throws them off keel, no matter how much you can say, "Oh, there's orbs that you catch in the camera." We had a German tourist that was looking at me like I was cracked. And I said, "No, you can get sometimes outlines of ghosts or different things will cause different things to happen with ghosts." And she's looking at me like, "This one's crazy." I'm not paying attention. So we came to Harriet's staircase, and she starts screaming up and down, "I have one, I have one, I have one." I said, "Well, you're very lucky you caught them on film."
Wow. That's amazing.
It's with that quickness that it happens or it doesn't.
There's talk about fairy mounds. I have no idea, living here in Burbank, California, what fairy mounds are.
That would be where the fairy or the Tusadidana, the race that was in legend here before, they went underground. So it has it that they went into the mounds of earth. And to this day, we have several around the castle at the beginning of the avenue. There's a football pitch that plays around it. The farmer will not plow it, and it's a raised mound. It has white thorn bushes on it. They won't go near it. Most farmers will not touch a fairy mound because of the thought of letting anything out or them stealing a child for them, would be one of the Irish legends.
Now, some say that Charleville Castle is built in a fairy path.
I never thought of it. I know the ley lines are very real. There's something that even a scientist could get his teeth into, because they actually do exist. Some say that the ley lines link other castles and sacred spots together, that if you got a map, you could see them nearly linking pathways. What we also have is we have yew trees planted in a Union Jack around the back of the castle. Now, yew trees are frequently planted in cemeteries to hold the body down, that at least the body escape. But they're also planted to keep the spirits in. So I'm wondering if our yew trees have something to do with that.
I don't think they're working at your castle. I don't think they're keeping the spirits in at all. I think the spirits are running free on the grounds and the castle and having a good old life there with you.
Well, that's all right. They're great. They're company. The year that they left, I missed them.
That's interesting.
We also have a moat that surrounds us. It's not a wet moat. It's a dry moat that goes down 17 feet around the castle. And that was for protection if anybody was going to attack, that they'd first have to climb up the moat, and supposedly soldiers could shoot them before they got up into the surrounding fields.
Well, it sounds like you had spirits protecting your children.
I'm very grateful for that, because 4-year-old up the staircase, Harriet was 7 when she leaned the wrong way and fell. But a 4-year-old, that's simply terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
But he just took it for granted.
He probably just saw her as another child.
Yeah, it was her and a little boy.
Who is the little boy, though, I wonder?
We haven't fully traced him. He does have a memorial plaque in the church on Hop Hill that says, in honor of Henry Walter, who died at age 7. And I don't think it had to do with the fall. I don't know, because a lot of children would have died from diseases back then.
Wow. So I wonder if it's Henry and Harriet.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. They both held his hand. Now, he's an adult now and has no memory of it, but he did tell a few of his teachers. So, thank goodness.
I wonder what it was like for your children growing up in a castle that was haunted.
They were never scared, even though my eldest said she got locked in the nursery closet once.
Oh, boy.
Which had to be scary. But she didn't have, except for that, and I think a shove once somewhere, she felt. They loved it. They played. They had a great place for hide and seek. I suppose if we were going around saying, oh, be careful of this and that and the other thing, but they just enjoyed it. And their friends did. Although we did have different cousins, children from W.'s family that came and stayed. We had set up the butler's pantry as a little kitchen living area, and they stayed overnight, and they saw the dog's eyes light up green, and they had all kinds of flights of madness and being scared, and finally going to sleep all together in a big sleeping bag on a mattress.
Amazing. There's also talk that you found an altar in the walls hidden?
Yes, we did. It's creepy with roots and cups and skulls, but I honestly don't know if it's real or not. I did find some bones down in the dungeon region, but I couldn't bring myself to bring them to anyone that would identify them as human, because then that gets scary.
I wouldn't even want to put them in my car. Yeah, where do you take bones?
I don't know. I imagine crime scene. I don't know. I can't really think of the guard saying, well, where'd this come from? And explain that it's from a building that's 200 years old.
I'm with you. I think you should just leave them in the dungeon.
I don't think he wants a case that's that cold.
No.
There's some things better that you don't verify. Because, I mean, who knows who I unleash if that happened. You do sometimes get the feeling that you're protecting things by being here. We have had sage and kind of blessings that the place, remain pure. Because with a building like this I think belongs to people. I don't know that I'd want to go on a dark side. That'd be kind of scary.
Oh, yeah. No, I think what you were saying about how there's good and evil, I think you could have definitely brought out the evil at Charleville Castle.
I think so. I think having young, innocent children here helped. We had old houses before that I grew up in that were haunted and that did have some strange spirits and some good spirits. Like once I found in a cellar, I found in a room that was newly built, well, maybe 100 years old built, I found remains of bones in a little bag, almost like a little child.
What's up with you finding bones everywhere?
I don't know. Who's going to put bones in a paper bag in a wall?
I mean, my mind is flooded with ideas because I've seen that movie. Oh, my goodness.
We thought maybe there were bones from somebody that had a miscarriage and wasn't married or something like that, and so they just hid it back then.
Right.
We never found out. We buried the bones eventually, but we never found out. But yeah, bones. That's weird, isn't it? Bones.
It is weird. I never found any bones at my house. I mean, I've heard that there's some beloved pets buried in my backyard.
Okay, so you could find bones.
Oh, I could.
We have a pet tombstone.
You do?
In the back, in the garden. Yeah, it was to Fufu, I think, poodle renown, and the little poodle died when it was like, I don't know, so many months old. And it has a regular carved headstone, 1800 and something, in the back where I have my vegetable garden.
Oh, wow. So you have a pet cemetery in your vegetable garden?
Well, I keep far away from it so we don't disturb it. And there's also a tombstone in the front of the moated area, a pet tombstone, but I think somebody moved it there. I don't know who moved it there and put it in the wall. So they had tombstones for their pets.
And is there a cemetery on the grounds?
No, the cemetery of the family would be on Hop Hill and underneath the altar area. And that was closed off because this is evil. People thought that they had jewels on and they tried breaking in there. So they just cemented it up so nobody could go in there.
There's so many mysteries at Charleville Castle.
There are.
So many secrets that you may never know. It must fascinate you.
Well, it does. It totally fascinates me. I'd love to harness some of the energy here, because you do have things happen, and if you only knew how to harness it, well, who knows what could happen.
Well, I think that's what the Earl of Charleville was trying to do with the black magic and, all the Freemasons. Yeah. And it sounds like there's a history of men at Charleville trying to harness the energy there and use it for whatever purpose.
They believed, that was the time too, that they strongly believed in the forces, and they would have had time to fiddle around, unlike poorer people. These people had vast quantities of wealth. They had 40 staff working here originally, just when there was family. And that's just in the house. And Lord knows how many they had on the estate. So they didn't have to go and, the window just opened on its own. Welcome.
Was that them?
It certainly seemed like, because they just kind of opened.
You're kidding. What room are you in?
I'm in my bedroom right now. It's a bedroom, sitting room.
Has your window ever opened before?
Yeah. Things clink and clank and do make noise in the night here. Although it's not night, it's a beautiful sunny day. But I definitely think it was a sign.
And do you find that sometimes you're having a conversation about a certain topic and then you'll have a response like that? A window will open?
Yes, you do. You don't get direct. It's like the pictures we asked who my mother saw that time. And it's like, well, they didn't say, well, they were so-and-so and so-and-so, but they gave hints all the time and led us to find out who they were. Because chances of finding a picture of Francis Johnston was rare, and having the book that it was in, and he was a young man in the picture. That's how she saw him. And he actually died quite old. And then the Earl of Charleville, there's very few pictures you could get hold of. And that was in a small book that I happened to borrow.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely have entities there that are trying to communicate with you.
Yeah. Show me the treasure.
Show me the treasure.
Then I get an answer back. You're living in the treasure.
Oh.
I think they spent anything they had, because they overspent. They were even allowed to mint their own coinage called a Charleville token, cashable at the company store the first Tuesday of every month, worth 13 pence. Now that same token is worth 250 to 300 euros.
Oh, wow. I'd love to see one of those. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I have one. So when you visit, I can show it to you.
I'm going there. I'm going to go there and I'm going to visit you, Bridget. I can't wait to see Charleville Castle for myself.
Oh, you'll love it. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me. It was an absolute honor, and I'm fascinated by your castle. Oh, wow. And the window opened in the middle of our interview. I can't believe it. Oh.
That is strange.
Oh,
it's going again. It generally doesn't reopen, but it did. So I suppose it's a sign.
Oh, wow.
They like to be remembered, the ghosts.
They will be remembered. I will always remember this. Do you have a creepy true crime or paranormal story that you would like to share on Aimee Keeps It Creepy? I know you do. Please email a brief description of your story to info@creepypodcast.com. I can't wait to get creeped out. Thank you for listening.
Toxic content.